Rain pours mercilessly on a quiet Chicago evening as Marcus Thompson, exhausted from another double shift, drives his weathered Honda through puddle-strewn streets. His mind drifts to his sleeping 4-year-old son at home with the babysitter. When he spots her, a solitary figure huddled at a bus stop, drenched and shivering, without hesitation he pulls over, offering a ride to this stranger who seems oddly familiar. During their drive through empty streets, she shares her struggles with fame, while he talks about bedtime stories and mortgage payments, neither realizing how this chance encounter will change both their lives forever. Could a simple act of kindness on a rainy night lead to Hollywood's most unexpected love story? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Daddy, the sun is awake. Marcus Thompson's eyes fluttered open to find Tommy's face inches from his own, the boy's chocolate-brown curls still mussed from sleep. The digital clock on the nightstand blinked, 6:15 a.m., 15 precious minutes before his alarm. He reached for the worn leather wallet on his bedside table, fingers brushing against the photo tucked inside. Tommy's first steps, Sarah cheering him on from behind. The last photo they'd taken as a family. "Hey, buddy," Marcus whispered, pulling his son close. "Did you dream about dinosaurs again?" Tommy shook his head, climbing onto the bed. "Dragons, and they were friendly ones. Like in my book." Marcus smiled, though his muscles ached from last night's double shift. The evening's rain had soaked through his jacket, and that strange encounter at the bus stop. He pushed the memory aside, focusing on the morning routine they'd perfected over. "The past 2 years. All right, Captain Tommy. Mission breakfast begins in T-5 minutes. What's our game plan?" "Cheerios for me, coffee for Daddy." Tommy bounced on the bed, nearly knocking over the lamp. "Whoa there, Space Cadet." Marcus caught the lamp with one hand, Tommy with the other. "Remember what we said about indoor bouncing? Save it for the trampoline at the park," Tommy recited, then added hopefully, "Can we go today?" Marcus's heart squeezed. "Not today, buddy. Daddy's got both jobs again. But Mrs. Rodriguez promised to take you to story time at the library." The familiar guilt settled in his stomach as Tommy's face fell slightly before brightening again. "Will you read me 2 stories tonight to make up for it?" "3, Marcus promised, already calculating the hours. "Mechanic work until 5. 2 hours with Tommy before the evening shift driving for Ridgeshare. If he skipped dinner, he could squeeze in those stories. In the kitchen, Marcus moved on autopilot. Cheerios for Tommy, instant coffee for himself, lunch packed for Mrs. Rodriguez to take to daycare. His son chatted away about dragons and clouds and the new girl at preschool who could whistle through her teeth. The morning sun caught the silver frame on the counter. Sarah's smile frozen in time, her arms wrapped around a newborn Tommy. The hospital bracelet was still on her wrist. 3 days later, the postpartum complications had taken her, leaving Marcus with a newborn son and a mountain of medical debt. "Daddy, you're making the sad face again." Marcus blinked, realizing he'd been staring at the photo. "Just thinking about how much Mommy would love your dragon stories, bud." Tommy nodded, sagely, milk dripping down his chin. "She hears them in heaven. Mrs. Rodriguez says so. Mrs. Rodriguez is very wise." Marcus checked his watch. 7 a.m. "Time to get dressed, Captain. Remember, socks first, then pants, then shirt." Tommy raced toward his room, Cheerios forgotten. Marcus pulled out his phone, checking the previous night's ride-share earnings. Decent tips, especially from that last passenger. The mysterious woman from the bus stop had insisted on adding an extra 20 despite his protests. There had been something familiar about her, but in the rain and darkness, the sound of drawers banging brought him back to the present. He found Tommy struggling with his dinosaur t-shirt, head stuck in an armhole. "Houston, we have a problem." Marcus laughed, helping him straighten it out. By 7:45, they were pulling up to Little Explorer's daycare. Tommy's Batman backpack was stuffed with his favorite books, a change of clothes, and the lunch Marcus had packed. Mrs. Rodriguez was already waiting at the door, her silver hair catching the morning light. "Buenos dias, mis amores," she called, holding out her arms as Tommy ran to her. "Maria, thank you again for the late pickup last night." Marcus handed her the daycare payment. Last week's rides had been good enough to finally catch up. She waved away his gratitude. "This boy is my sunshine. We had wonderful time making paper airplanes, though perhaps next time not so close to bedtime, eh?" She winked at Tommy, who giggled. "Daddy's reading 3 stories tonight," Tommy announced proudly. Mrs. Rodriguez's eyes met Marcus's, understanding in their depths. She'd been watching Tommy since Sarah died, charging half her usual rate and often staying late without complaint. 3 stories, que maravilloso! But first we have library time, and then you can show me more airplane designs. Marcus knelt to hug Tommy goodbye. "Be good for Mrs. Rodriguez, okay? Daddy loves you to the moon. And back times infinity." Tommy finished their ritual, squeezing Marcus's neck before running inside. Standing in the daycare parking lot, Marcus allowed himself one moment of exhaustion. The mechanic shop was waiting, then hours of navigating Chicago traffic for Ridge. But Tommy needed new shoes and the electric bill was due, and somehow they'd make it work. They always did. He climbed back into his Honda, the engine protesting slightly before turning over. The morning rush hour was building, but his mind drifted to the previous night's passenger. There had been something in her voice when she talked, about pressure and expectations, something real beneath the polished surface. For a moment, in the quiet of his car, they'd just been 2 people sharing the weight of their worlds. Marcus shook his head, pushing the memory away. Time to focus on what mattered, keeping the wheels turning, the bills paid, and his son's world full of dragons and stories and possibility. The rest was just rain on the windshield, better left to dry in the morning sun. Claire Bennett stared at the vintage poster framed on her hotel suite wall. Midnight in Manhattan, her breakthrough role from 15 years ago. 23 years old, fresh-faced, playing a wide-eyed girl, discovering the city's magic. The charm. Critics had called her luminous, a revelation, the next Grace Kelly. Now, at 38, those same critics scrutinized every line around her eyes, every role she chose, every perceived flaw. "Claire, hair and makeup are waiting." Her assistant, Rachel, appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. "And the studio executives want to move up the afternoon meeting. Something about reshoot schedules." "Of course they do." Claire smoothed her silk robe, catching her reflection in the mirror. Still beautiful, everyone said so, but the morning light was unforgiving. "What's the damage from last night's escape?" Rachel's fingers flew across the tablet. "Nothing major. Your regular driver is mortified about the flat tire, but no one noticed you were gone, though you really should have called me instead of taking public transit." Claire's mind drifted to the rain-streaked car window, the gentle rumble of an aging Honda, and a voice that hadn't cared who she was. "Sometimes it's nice to be nobody." "You haven't been nobody since 2009, Rachel's tone softened. "I know Chicago's been rough. These serious roles always are. But disappearing isn't the answer." The new film was meant to be her transition piece. From romantic lead to serious dramatic actor, echoes of autumn, a raw exploration of grief and redemption. The studio had initially balked at casting her. Too pretty, they'd said. Not enough gravitas. 6 months of intense preparation had proven them wrong, but the pressure was crushing. "The reshoot meeting," Claire said, changing the subject. "Push it to tomorrow. Tell them I'm deep in character work." Rachel raised an eyebrow but made the note. "And the interview with Chicago Living. Keep it. Local press matters." Claire moved to the window, watching the city wake up 20 floors below. Somewhere out there, a kind stranger with tired eyes was starting his day, probably forgetting all about the woman he'd helped. The makeup chair felt like a confessional. Maria, her longtime makeup artist, worked in silence, understanding Claire's need for these quiet morning moments. The transformation was subtle but crucial. Claire Bennett, the star, emerging from Claire Bennett, the woman who sometimes wished she could vanish into the rain. "You seem different this morning," Maria murmured, blending foundation, "more relaxed." Claire thought of the honest conversation in that humble car, about bedtime stories and struggle and simple kindness. Had a reminder of what real life feels like. "Careful," Maria teased gently. "Real life is what you left behind in Kansas." But that wasn't quite true. Claire had left behind Emily Anderson, the banker's daughter who did community theatre. Claire Bennett was both more and less than real. A carefully constructed image maintained by an army of professionals and an endless series of roles. The day unfolded like a well-rehearsed scene. Blocking rehearsals for the film's climactic confrontation, conversations with her agent about upcoming projects, discussions about the Oscar campaign they'd build around echoes of autumn. Everything calculated, everything strategic. "Your mother called again," Rachel mentioned during a break. "She saw the early footage. She's worried the role is too dark." Claire suppressed a sigh. Her mother had never quite accepted that her daughter had outgrown the romantic comedies that had made her famous. "Tell her I'm fine, tell her." She trailed off, remembering the photo in the stranger's wallet, a little boy's first steps. Real joy, real pride, real life. "Claire," Rachel prompted, "never mind. Just tell her I'll call tomorrow." The afternoon stretched into evening. Claire nailed her scenes, earning rare praise from the director. "Raw," he called it. "Honest." If he only knew that she was channeling the simplicity of last night's conversation, the way it had felt to be seen as just another person seeking shelter from the rain. In her suite that night, Claire dismissed her usual evening entourage. Rachel lingered at the door, concerned. "You've been quiet today." "The internet is full of theories about why you missed the gallery opening last night. I need to know what story we're going with." Claire touched the window, cool against her fingertips. "Do you ever wonder what it would be like to help someone without them knowing who you are? To have a conversation that isn't going to end up in some magazine? That's not your world anymore." Rachel's voice was gentle but firm. "You worked too hard to get here." But here felt increasingly hollow. The suite was perfect, the view spectacular, the minibar stocked with her favorite wines. Yet Claire found herself thinking about a weathered Honda with a child's car seat in the back, about a father who worked 2 jobs and still made time for bedtime stories. "Get some rest," Rachel advised. "Tomorrow's a heavy shooting day." Alone. At last, Claire changed into silk pajamas and settled onto the oversized couch. The script for tomorrow's scenes lay on the coffee table, but instead of reviewing her lines, she opened her laptop. A simple search. Chicago rideshare drivers. Nothing. Bus routes near the hotel. Too many possibilities. She was being ridiculous, of course. One random act of kindness didn't merit this obsession. But as she finally drifted off to sleep, Claire couldn't shake the memory of that voice in the darkness. "My son, Tommy, he said, he thinks every puddle holds a secret universe." Such a simple observation, yet it held more truth than any line she'd delivered on screen. For the first time in years, Claire Bennett, star of stage and screen, fell asleep thinking not of reviews or ratings or box office numbers, but of puddles and their secret universes, waiting to be discovered by those brave enough to look. The tweet appeared at 8:47 a.m. "Just saw Claire Bennett getting into some random guy's car last night. Not her usual driver. Story developing." Within hours, it had gone viral. Rachel burst into Claire's trailer during the morning shoot, her normally composed face tight with concern. "We have a situation. Someone got a photo of you getting into that car last night. It's grainy, but it's definitely you." Claire's stomach dropped. Not for herself. She'd weathered media storms before. But for the kind stranger who was about to have his life upended. How bad. TMZ is running with it. They're calling him your mystery man. Twitter is exploding with theories. Rachel thrust her tablet forward, showing a blurry image of Claire climbing into the Honda. "What were you thinking?" On set, the director called for quiet. but Claire could barely focus on her lines. Between takes, she glimpsed her co-star scrolling. Through his phone, eyebrows raised. The whispers had already started. Her phone buzzed. Mrs. Rodriguez's daycare center was calling about reporters gathering outside. Marcus remained unaware, still driving his morning routes, still believing last night had been nothing more than a simple act of kindness. "We need to get ahead of this," Rachel insisted during lunch. "I can have PR release a statement, something, about car trouble and a good Samaritan. Keep it vague." But the internet was already weaving its own narrative. Claire's secret lover was trending. Amateur sleuths were analyzing the car's make and model, trying to trace its owner. Someone had even started a Twitter account called Find Claire's Driver that gained thousands of followers in minutes. "Claire?" The director's voice cut through her thoughts. "We need you on set." She moved through her scenes mechanically, the irony not lost on her. Here she was, playing a woman confronting life's unexpected turns, while outside her carefully constructed world was tilting on its axis. Rachel appeared again as they wrapped for the day. The studio's concerned about the timing. With Oscar season approaching. "He has a son," Claire interrupted quietly. "A little boy who believes in secret universes in puddles. I can't let them turn his father into tabloid fodder." But it was already happening. By evening, 3 different rideshare companies had released statements confirming they were looking into the matter. Amateur paparazzi were staking out every mechanic shop in Chicago, working from the tiny glimpse of Marcus's work uniform visible in the photo. In her hotel suite, Claire watched the story spiral across social media. Someone had started a thread, analyzing her pattern of dating everyday men, citing a grocery store clerk she'd once had coffee with, and a bartender who turned out to be an aspiring actor. Her phone rang, her agent this time. "Claire, darling, we need to control this narrative. I'm thinking exclusive interview, maybe with Ellen. Play up the fairy tale angle. America loves a good Cinderella story, even with the genders reversed." "No," Claire said firmly. "No interviews, no statements, not yet. The longer we wait, the more speculation builds. People are already betting on whether he's another publicity stunt." Claire ended the call, walking to the window. The same rain that had brought them together was falling again, turning Chicago's lights into a blur of color. Somewhere out there, a father was probably reading bedtime stories to his son, unaware that his simple act of kindness was about to change everything. Her decision crystallized. She couldn't stop the media storm, but she could choose how to weather it. And more importantly, she could choose how to protect the man who had seen her not as Claire Bennett, the star, but simply as someone who needed help on a rainy night. Rachel looked up from her tablet as Claire emerged from her bedroom. Changed into simple jeans and a sweater. "Where are you going?" "To make things right," Claire answered, picking up her car keys. Before they get it all wrong. Marcus first noticed something was off when he arrived at the garage. His co-workers fell silent as he walked in, their phones quickly disappearing into pockets. Mike, his boss for the past 5 years, called him into the office before he could even put on his coveralls. "You planning to tell me about your new girlfriend, Thompson?" Mike tossed that morning's Chicago Tribune onto the desk. Marcus's world tilted sideways. There on the front page of the entertainment section was a grainy photo of his Honda in the rain. The headline screamed, "Claire Bennett's mystery driver, Hollywood star's secret Chicago romance." His throat went dry. "That was just a passenger. I picked up a woman at a bus stop. It was raining." Mike leaned back in his chair, eyebrows raised. "That passenger was Claire Bennett. You know, the movie star? She's filming that big Oscar movie downtown." The pieces fell into place. Her familiar face, the conversation about pressure and public expectations, the way she'd seemed to choose her words so carefully. Marcus sank into the chair across from Mike's desk. "I had no idea," he managed. She needed help." His phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Rodriguez. "Channel 7 news crew outside daycare. Don't worry. Tommy safe. Inside, what happening? Marcus's heart clenched. Tommy, he had to protect Tommy from this circus. Look, Mike said, his voice softening. Take the morning off, sort this out. But Marcus, he waited until their eyes met. The vultures are circling. Be careful. Outside the office, his co-workers tried to act normal, but he caught the sideways glances, heard the whispered conversations. Joey from the tire department actually asked for his autograph, laughing like it was a joke, but not really. In his car, Marcus pulled up the news on his phone. The story was everywhere. Social media had already uncovered his name, his workplace, even old Facebook photos from before Sarah died. Strangers were analyzing his life, debating whether he was good enough for Claire Bennett. The reality of it hit him like a physical blow. Last night had been real, just two people sharing a quiet moment in the rain. But now it was becoming something else, something twisted and public and completely out of his control. His phone kept buzzing. Unknown numbers, probably reporters. A text from Ridge Share Corporate asking him to come in for a discussion about recent events. Another message from Mrs. Rodriguez. Reporter offering money for interview about you. I tell him, go. Away! Marcus closed his eyes, remembering the woman from last night, not Claire Bennett, the movie star, but the tired stranger who had talked about feeling trapped by other people's expectations. Now he understood exactly what she had meant. He started. The car, muscle memory taking him toward Little Explorer's daycare. Tommy needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere away from prying cameras and invasive questions. But as he turned onto the familiar street, he saw the news vans parked outside the daycare center. Marcus pulled over, his hands tight on the steering wheel. Every instinct screamed to protect his son, to keep their quiet life from becoming tabloid fodder. But how do you hide from a story that's already writing itself without your permission? His phone buzzed again. Another text from Mrs. Rodriguez. Back door clear, come quick. Taking a deep breath, Marcus put the car in drive. Whatever happened next, he had to make sure Tommy's world stayed full of dragons and secret universes. In puddles, not paparazzi and public speculation about his father's love life. The morning sun caught his rearview mirror, and for a moment he could have sworn he saw Sarah's reflection, reminding him that sometimes the biggest acts of love are the ones that no one sees. Claire sat at her hotel room desk, a blank note card before her. Simple cream-colored stationery, the kind real people used for thank you notes and condolences. Not Claire Bennett letterhead, not studio paper, just honest words waiting to be written. The studio's lawyers strongly advise against personal contact, Rachel reminded her, pacing the suite. They're worried about liability. What if he tries to sue? Claire looked up from the blank card. For what? Being kind. For invasion of privacy. His son's daycare is surrounded by reporters. His workplace had to call the police to clear the parking lot. Rachel's tablet chimed with another alert. And now his ex-girlfriend is shopping around an interview. He's a widower, Claire corrected quietly. His wife died after their son was born. He mentioned it during the drive. The revelation hung in the air between them. Rachel sat down heavily on the suite's designer sofa. You really talked to him, didn't you? Actually talked. Claire picked up her pen, remembering the gentle way he'd spoken about his son. About bedtime stories and morning routines. He didn't know who I was, Rachel. Do you know how rare that is? How precious? Which is exactly why you should let PR handle this. Release a statement, thank him publicly, maybe make a donation to a children's charity in his name. Keep it professional. But professional wasn't what made a tired father stop for a stranger in the rain. Professional wasn't what made him share stories about his son while navigating dark streets. Professional wasn't real. Claire began to write, Dear Marcus, I'm sorry. Not for accepting your help. That moment of kindness meant more than you know. But for what's happening now. You offered shelter to a stranger, and in return, your privacy has been invaded. I want to make this right. She paused, considering her next words carefully. Rachel's phone buzzed again. Claire, The director's asking about tomorrow's shooting schedule, and your mother's called 3 times. Everyone needs answers." "Everyone except him," Claire murmured, returning to her note. He just needed to know. His son was safe. The decision crystallized as she wrote. She'd created educational foundations before, supported children's hospitals, funded arts programs. But this would be different, specific, personal, meaningful. "Rachel, call my financial advisor. I want to set up an education fund." "For his son?" Rachel's fingers hesitated over her phone. "Claire, think about how this looks. The press will say—" "I don't care what they say." Claire finished the note with her private number, not her public one, not her agent's, but the line only family could reach. "For once, I want to do something real." She sealed the envelope, writing, "Marcus Thompson," in her clear, unpretentious handwriting. The same handwriting that had signed countless autographs now spelled out the name of someone who had reminded her what genuine humanity felt like. "And the premiere?" Rachel asked softly. "Your publicist thinks, invite him." Claire, not as a publicity stunt, not as Hollywood's latest fairy tale. "As my guest." Claire stood, gathering her coat. "Now, I need you to get me an address." Rachel sighed, but her fingers were already moving across her tablet. "You know this changes everything. The narrative, the Oscar campaign, your image." Claire thought of Marcus's wallet, the worn leather protecting precious memories. Some things mattered more than image. Maybe it's time for a change. She picked up the envelope, feeling its weight, the weight of choice, of consequence, of possibility. Maybe it's time to remember who we are when the cameras stop rolling. Outside, the city lights blurred in the perpetual Chicago drizzle. Somewhere in those streets, a father was trying to protect his son's innocence from the storm she had inadvertently brought to his door. The least she could do was offer him an umbrella. The modest 2-bedroom house looked exactly as Marcus had described it during their rainy night drive. Nothing fancy, but the maple tree out front puts on quite a show in fall. Now, standing before it in the morning light, Claire noticed the carefully tended flower boxes, the small bicycle propped against the porch, the wind chime made of seashells tinkling softly in the breeze. Her security team had insisted on sweeping the street first, clearing the few persistent photographers who'd discovered the address. Rachel had argued against coming personally, but some things couldn't be delegated. Claire checked her reflection in her car window, simple blouse, minimal makeup, hair pulled back naturally, as close to the woman from that rainy night as she could manage. The envelope with the education fund details felt heavy in her hand. Before she could reach the front door, it swung open. A small boy with unruly curls burst out, brandishing a crayon drawing like a shield. "Are you really the princess from the movie?" "Tommy!" Marcus appeared behind him, freezing when he saw Claire. He looked even more tired than the night they'd met, the weight of unexpected publicity evident in the shadows under his eyes. "I'm not actually a princess," Claire said, kneeling to Tommy's level. "But I did play one in a movie once." "Is that what you're drawing?" Tommy shook his head, holding up his artwork. "It's you in Daddy's car. See, all the rain is purple because that's my favorite color." Marcus stepped forward, his protective instinct visible in every movement. "Tommy, why don't you show Mrs. Rodriguez your drawing? She's waiting in the kitchen." But Tommy was already tugging at Claire's sleeve. "Do you want to see my other drawings? I made one with dragons, too." Something in Claire's chest tightened at the pure, uncomplicated acceptance in the child's eyes. No agenda, no angle, just genuine curiosity and excitement. "I'd love to," she said softly, looking to Marcus for permission. He hesitated, studying her face. She wondered if he was searching for the stranger from that rainy night or the movie star from the headlines. Finally, he nodded. 5 minutes, bud. Then homework with Mrs. Rodriguez." Tommy's room was a wonderland of imagination. Space posters, dinosaur models, and artwork covering every available surface. He proudly showed Claire his latest masterpiece, a crayon recreation of his father's car, surrounded by what appeared to be friendly dragons. "The dragons keep the car safe," he explained seriously, "like Daddy keeps me safe." From the doorway, Marcus cleared his throat. "Tommy, homework time." Once Tommy had bounded off to the kitchen, an awkward silence filled the space between them. Marcus spoke first, his voice carefully neutral. "I assume you didn't come just to see my son's art gallery." Claire handed him the envelope. "I wanted to apologize and to try to make things right." He didn't open it, just held it like it might bite. "You don't owe me anything. I'd have done the same for anyone. I know. That's why I'm here." She gestured to the living room. "Can we talk?" The room was modest but warm. Well-worn furniture, family photos, a bookshelf overflowing with children's stories. A half-finished puzzle dominated the coffee table. Dinosaurs again. "The education fund is already set up," Claire said as they sat. "In Tommy's name. He can use it for any school he wants, any program he chooses." Marcus stiffened. "We don't need charity." "It's not charity, it's—" She searched for the right words. "It's a thank you, not just for the ride, but for reminding me what it feels like to be seen as a person, not a headline." He finally opened the envelope, his eyes widening at the figures. "This is too much. Is giving your child options ever too much?" She nodded toward Tommy's drawings on the fridge. "He's got quite an imagination. Maybe he'll want to study art or engineering or both. Now he can." Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she remembered from that night. "The reporters, the cameras, I just want to protect him from all that, which is why I have." "One more proposal." Claire took a deep breath. "Come to the premiere as my guest. Let's give them their story, but on our terms. One night, and then they'll move on to the next headline." Through the kitchen door, they could hear Tommy chattering away to Mrs. Rodriguez about dragons and princesses and purple rain. The sound of ordinary life, extraordinary in its simplicity. "I'll think about it," Marcus said finally. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. Claire stood, understanding it was time to leave. At the door, she paused. "Your son, he makes the world more magical just by seeing it his way, doesn't he?" Marcus smiled, his first real smile since she'd arrived. "He gets that from his mom." "Thank you," Claire said softly, "for sharing some of that magic with a stranger in the rain." After Claire left, Marcus sat alone in his living room, the envelope containing Tommy's future heavy in his hands. The old family photo album lay open on the coffee table, Sarah's smile frozen in time, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. He'd been looking through it earlier, seeking guidance from memories. "You would know what to do," he whispered to Sarah's image. "You always knew." "Puppy?" Mrs. Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, her kind face concerned. "Tommy is asking if the princess will come back to see his new drawings." Marcus closed the album gently. "She's not really a princess, Maria. She's an actress who got caught in the rain." "Ah, but she has a kind heart." I saw how she looked at Tommy's art, not pretending, but really seeing. She sat beside him, her weathered hands folded in her lap, like his mama used to look at his first scribbles. The education fund paperwork lay between them, numbers that could change Tommy's life. Marcus had spent 3 years juggling bills, picking up extra shifts, calculating how to afford a decent education for his son. Now, a chance encounter in the rain had solved that problem. But at what cost? "Sarah and I—" He picked up their wedding photo, tucked safely in the album's first page. "We always said we'd give Tommy everything ourselves. No handouts, no shortcuts, just honest work and sacrifice." Mrs. Rodriguez clicked her tongue. "And this is not honest? This woman, she offers this gift not for show, but because she sees something special in Tommy, in you both." From the kitchen came the sound of Tommy humming, the theme song from one of Claire's movies, he realized with a start. The boy had spent the morning making his father describe every detail of the princess's visit, the premiere invitation. Marcus ran his fingers through his hair. It would mean cameras, reporters, everyone watching. Tommy's too young for that kind of attention. Or maybe, Mrs. Rodriguez suggested gently, you are the one who is afraid. Not for Tommy, but for your heart. The observation hit too close to home. He'd felt something that rainy night, a connection, a spark of understanding with a stranger who turned out to be anything but ordinary. And now, I promised Sarah I'd always put Tommy first. And you think Sarah would want Tommy to miss opportunities because his papa is scared of change? Mrs. Rodriguez picked up the envelope. This is not about romance or Hollywood. This is about a door opening for your son. Tommy's laughter drifted in from the kitchen, followed by the sound of crayons scratching on paper. His son, who saw dragons in the clouds and magic in rain puddles, who accepted Claire's visit with the pure joy only children possess. Marcus opened the album to Tommy's baby pictures, Sarah holding him in the hospital, their last moment of perfect happiness before everything changed. But Sarah had always said life was about moving forward, about finding beauty in unexpected places. Did I ever tell you what Sarah said when we found out she was pregnant? Marcus touched the photo. Gently, she said, life's biggest gifts often come disguised as challenges. Mrs. Rodriguez smiled. Your Sarah was a wise woman. The media circus, the attention, the speculation. Marcus closed the album slowly. That's the challenge. But Tommy's future, giving him every possible chance to chase his dreams, that's the gift. So, Mrs. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. So maybe it's time to be as brave as Sarah would have been. He stood, decision crystallizing. Tommy needs a suit for the premiere, something with dinosaurs if we can find it. And his papa, what will you wear? Marcus glanced at his reflection in the window, the tired mechanic in worn jeans and a faded t-shirt. I still have my wedding suit. It might need altering, but... No. Mrs. Rodriguez shook her head firmly. New chapter, new suit. Tommy's mama would want you to shine. From the kitchen, Tommy called out, Daddy, come. See, I drew you and the princess at the movies with dragons, protecting everyone from the rain. Marcus smiled, remembering Claire's genuine delight at his son's artwork. Maybe Mrs. Rodriguez was right. Maybe this wasn't about Hollywood romance or fairy tales. Maybe it was simply about allowing a moment of kindness to open new doors, about showing Tommy that magic could exist in the real world, not just in his drawings. He picked up his phone, finding Claire's private number in the envelope. It was time to say yes to possibility, yes to change, yes to whatever came next, dragons, princesses, and all. The magazine covers appeared within days of Marcus accepting the premiere invitation. Claire's Cinderella Man, screamed one tabloid, featuring a split image of Marcus in his work uniform beside Claire's latest red carpet photo. Hollywood princess finds her everyday hero, declared another, somehow having unearthed his high school yearbook picture. At the garage, Mike had to install security cameras after finding paparazzi hiding behind the dumpsters. Never thought I'd have to worry about TMZ at an auto shop, he grumbled, but he'd also started turning away reporters offering cash for interviews about his famous employee. Marcus's phone buzzed constantly with messages from old classmates, distant relatives, even Sarah's second cousin in Florida wanting to reconnect. His private Facebook account, dormant since Sarah's death, had thousands of friend requests. Daddy, why is my teacher asking about the princess? Tommy questioned one morning over Cheerios. She wants to know if you're getting married. Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. What did you tell her? That dragons don't rush into things. Tommy returned to his cereal, oblivious to his father's relief. But it wasn't just gossip. The serious papers ran think pieces about class divisions in America, using Marcus and Claire's relationship as a lens. Social media debated whether it was a publicity stunt, a real romance, or something in between. Video clips of Claire's past roles were analyzed for hints she had a type. Someone even started a podcast dedicated to tracking their love story. Claire's publicist called to prep him for the premiere. Keep answers short. Smile, but don't reveal too much. If anyone asks about Tommy, deflect. They're already asking about my son at his school, Marcus interrupted. How do I protect him from this? A pause. That's Not usually our biggest concern with premiere dates. That evening, Mrs. Rodriguez showed him a Spanish-language magazine someone had left at the daycare. The article painted him as a hard-working immigrant son made good, complete with quotes from family friends he'd never met. "At least they made you Colombian instead of Venezuelan," she said with a wry smile. "But they got Tommy's age wrong." The final straw came when he found a reporter interviewing his elderly neighbor about his suspicious late-night comings and goings as a rideshare driver. The woman who had brought him soup when Sarah died was clearly enjoying her moment in the spotlight, his phone lit up with a text from Claire. "I'm so sorry about all this. Say the word and we'll cancel." Marcus stared at the message, remembering their conversation about pressure and expectations that rainy night. He understood better now what she'd meant about living under constant scrutiny. Tommy's education fund paperwork sat on his kitchen table, a reminder of what really mattered. The media could spin whatever story they wanted, but they couldn't touch the truth. A simple act of kindness on a rainy night, a genuine connection, a chance to give his son opportunities he'd only dreamed of. He typed back, "Tommy wants to know if there will be dragons at the premiere." Her response came quickly, "No dragons, but I hear Iron Man might make an appearance. Robert owed me a favor." Marcus smiled, imagining Tommy's reaction. Then another text. "You're handling this better than most seasoned celebrities." "Well," he wrote back, "someone once told me that puddles hold secret universes. Maybe headlines are the same way. What matters is how you choose to see them." Through his kitchen window, he could see Tommy in the backyard with Mrs. Rodriguez, acting out some elaborate story with his dinosaur toys. His son's world was still full of magic and possibility, untouched by the media circus swirling around them. Maybe that was the real headline, the one no magazine would print. Father learns to see magic through his son's eyes. It wouldn't sell copies, but it was the only story that mattered. His phone buzzed with another message from Claire. "Just 2 weeks until the premiere. Ready to face the dragons?" Marcus watched Tommy laugh at something Mrs. Rodriguez said, his face lit with pure joy. "Ready," he typed back. "But fair warning. Tommy's telling everyone you're not a real princess because you haven't met his pet dinosaurs yet." Her response made him laugh out loud. "Clearly a serious oversight on my part. We should fix that soon." The suit fitting was Marcus's first glimpse into Claire's world. The tailor arrived at his house early on a Saturday morning, turning his modest living room into an impromptu atelier. The receipt for the custom tuxedo would have covered 3 months of his mortgage, but Claire's team had insisted on handling everything. "Stand straight, please," the tailor muttered around a mouthful of pins. "And stop fidgeting." "Sorry," Marcus apologized, catching Tommy's eye in the mirror. His son sat cross-legged on the couch, enthralled by the transformation of his father from mechanic to what he called a fancy dragon knight. Mrs. Rodriguez supervised from her armchair, occasionally offering opinions in rapid-fire Spanish to the tailor, who answered in kind. Marcus suspected they were discussing more than just the cut of his jacket. "The shoulders need to be stronger," the tailor declared. "You have a workman's build. We'll emphasize that. Authenticity is everything in Hollywood." Marcus nearly laughed at the irony. Here he was, being made more authentic by a man who'd dressed movie stars for 30 years. His phone buzzed. Claire checking in. They'd been texting regularly, simple messages about Tommy's latest adventures or the challenges of dealing with sudden fame. It felt normal, somehow, real. "How's the fitting going?" she'd written. "Your tailor keeps calling me interesting proportions. Should I be worried? Giorgio's a perfectionist, but trust him. He made me look like a queen when I felt like a farm girl at my first Oscars." Tommy bounded over, still in his dinosaur pajamas. "Can I show the princess my suit too?" Marcus angled the phone, snapping a photo of Tommy's reflection in the mirror, his pajama-clad form standing proudly next to his father's half-pinned tuxedo. He sent it with the caption, "The real star of the premiere." Claire's response was immediate. "The dinosaurs are definitely a better choice than my first red carpet look. I wore pink taffeta. There are still memes." The fitting continued. Giorgio, muttering about lines and presents while Mrs. Rodriguez nodded sagely. Marcus found himself thinking about Sarah, how she'd love to dress up for their rare date nights, how she'd tease him about his one good suit that never quite fit right. "She would love this," Mrs. Rodriguez said softly, reading his mind. As usual, all of it, the fairy tale, the magic, the chance for Tommy to see his father shine. The premiere was 2 weeks away. Claire's team had arranged everything: car service, security, media training. They'd even hired a child psychologist to help prepare Tommy for the attention, though the boy seemed far more concerned about whether Iron Man would really be there than about photographers. "Almost finished," Giorgio announced, stepping back to survey his work. "Now about the bow tie. No clip-ons," Marcus said firmly. Sarah had taught him to tie a proper bow tie for their wedding, some skills you never forgot. That evening, after Tommy was in bed, Marcus found himself standing in front of his bedroom mirror, practicing the waves and smiles Claire's publicist had demonstrated. He felt ridiculous, but then remembered Claire's words from their rainy night. "Drive. Sometimes the hardest part isn't the performance, it's believing you deserve to be on that stage." His phone lit up with another text from Claire. "Just saw Giorgio's preliminary sketches. You clean up nice, mechanic." "Careful," he wrote back. "Tommy's convinced you're only interested in me for my car repair skills." "Smart kid. I do have this annoying rattling in my Bentley." Marcus smiled, remembering the easy conversation in his Honda that night. "Bentleys are overrated. Now a '67 Mustang. That's a car worth talking about." "Noted. For our second date, we'll skip the red carpet and go straight to the garage." The word date hung there, blinking on his screen. They'd been careful until now, keeping things light, focusing on Tommy and the premiere, but there was something there. Something that had started in the rain and grown with every text, every shared joke, every genuine moment. "About that," he typed slowly. "After the premiere, maybe we could get coffee, something normal." The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Finally, I know a place. Small cafe in Lincoln Park. Great coffee, terrible pastries, zero paparazzi. And they have crayons for Tommy." Marcus looked at his reflection again, not the tuxedoed version Giorgio was creating, but himself, a single dad who'd stopped to help a stranger in the rain and somehow stepped into a different story altogether. "It's a date," he wrote back. "But Tommy will expect dragons." "Don't worry," came her reply. "I'm getting better at spotting them in puddles." The Chicago theater's marquee blazed against the twilight sky, a constellation of bulbs spelling out "Echoes of Autumn, World Premiere." Marcus stood in the back of the limousine, adjusting his bow tie one last time, while Tommy pressed his face against the tinted window, counting the camera flashes. "Remember what we practiced?" Marcus asked, smoothing his son's dinosaur print pocket square, a last-minute addition that Giorgio had somehow made look elegant rather than whimsical. "No running, no shouting, and if anyone asks about the princess, tell them dragons never kiss and tell," Tommy recited solemnly, then broke into a grin. "Daddy, look! Iron Man!" Robert Downey Jr. was indeed making his way down the red carpet, stopping to wave at the crowds behind the barriers. The actor had kept his promise to Claire, agreeing to make Tommy's first premiere special. The car pulled to a stop. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Ready?" He looked at his son, at the crowd waiting outside, at the life-changing moment suspended between heartbeats. "Ready," he typed back. The door opened and sound crashed over them like a wave. Screaming fans, calling photographers, the sustained roar of curiosity about Claire Bennett's Mystery Man. Marcus stepped out first, turning to help Tommy, just as they'd practiced. The boy's eyes went wide at the spectacle, but he kept hold of his father's hand. "Mr. Thompson, over here! Marcus, this way! Tommy! Tommy! Look here!" The photographers, had learned their names, Marcus realized with a start. But before the wall of cameras could become overwhelming, a familiar figure appeared beside them. Claire wore a midnight blue gown that seemed to catch and hold the starlight. But it was her smile, genuine, warm, matching the one from that rainy night, that steadied him. "You look like a real princess now," Tommy announced, making nearby reporters laugh. Claire knelt to his level, despite her elegant dress. "And you look like the most dashing dragon knight I've ever seen. Should we show them how it's done?" She stood, taking Tommy's other hand. Together they faced the cameras, not as Hollywood, royalty and common folk, but as three people who'd found something real in an unexpected moment. "Claire, is this your new family?" "Marcus, how does it feel to date a movie star?" Tommy, do you want a new mommy?" But they'd prepared for this. Claire smoothly guided them through the press line, fielding questions with practiced ease while keeping Tommy engaged in a running commentary about his favorite superheroes. Marcus found himself relaxing, following her lead, even managing to joke with a reporter about whether he'd fix the studio's fleet of cars next. "You're a natural," Claire murmured as they paused for photos. "Very Gregory Peck." "I have no idea what that means," he whispered back, making her laugh. Tommy tugged at their hands. "Look, Iron Man's coming." Robert Downey Jr. approached with the easy confidence of someone who'd mastered these moments. "Well, if it isn't the famous Thompson family, you must be the dragon expert I've heard so much about." Tommy's jaw dropped. "You know about the dragons? Are you kidding?" "Claire won't stop talking about them. Think you could give me some pointers? I'm a bit rusty on my dragon lore." As Tommy launched into an elaborate explanation of his dragon-spotting techniques, Marcus caught Claire watching them, something soft in her expression. She'd arranged this, he realized. Not for publicity, but for Tommy. For them. "Claire, Marcus, one more photo." They turned toward the cameras one last time. Tommy, caught up in his conversation with his hero, was gesturing animatedly about dragon wing spans. Claire's hand found Marcus's, warm and real despite the surreal setting. "Think anyone would notice if we made a break for it?" he murmured. "I know a great all-night diner. In this dress, we'd cause a riot." She squeezed his hand. "But save that thought for after." Inside the theater's grand lobby, away from the cameras, Tommy finally spotted the elaborate dessert table. "Daddy, they have chocolate dragons." 5 minutes, Marcus told him. "Then we need to find our seats." As Tommy carefully selected his treats, supervised by Claire's patient assistant Rachel, Claire turned to Marcus. "Still okay?" He considered the question. The past hour should have felt overwhelming. The cameras, the questions, the sheer spectacle of it all. But somehow, it didn't. Because underneath the glamour and the headlines, there was still that simple truth. A kind woman. A rainy night. A moment of genuine connection. "You know what Tommy said this morning?" Marcus watched his son explaining the finer points of chocolate dragon anatomy to an amused Robert Downey Jr. He said maybe this wasn't a fairy tale after all. Maybe it was just a regular story about people being kind to each other, and sometimes that's even better than magic. Claire's eyes softened. "Your son is wiser than most film critics." "He gets that from his mom." Marcus smiled. "Sarah would have loved this, not the cameras or the premiere, but seeing Tommy so happy, seeing possibilities instead of limitations." "Speaking of possibilities," Claire nodded toward the theater. "Doors. Ready to see what all the fuss is about?" Marcus offered her his arm, just as Giorgio had taught him. "Lead the way, princess." "That's the last time you get to call me that," she warned. But her smile gave her away. Together, they collected Tommy and his chocolate dragons, ready to face whatever came next. Cameras or no cameras, fairy tale or real life, magic or simple human kindness. Sometimes Marcus was learning. They were all the same thing. The morning after the premiere, Marcus woke to find Tommy already up, carefully arranging his signed Iron Man poster beside his bedroom window. The tuxedos hung side by side on the closet door. His and the miniature version that had stolen. "The show last night. "Daddy, we're famous," Tommy announced, brandishing the morning paper. There they were on the front page, Tommy between Marcus and Claire, all three laughing at something beyond the camera's view. The headline read, "Echoes of Autumn Premiere Becomes Family Affair." Marcus scanned the article over his coffee. The reviews for Claire's performance were glowing, but it was the sidebar about their fairy tale romance that dominated the coverage. Surprisingly, the tone was warm, almost respectful. In an industry known for manufactured moments, one critic wrote, "The genuine joy on display last night was a revelation." His phone had exploded with messages. "Mike from the garage. Look who's too fancy for oil changes now." Mrs. Rodriguez had sent a string of heart emojis and a photo of them she'd spotted in the Spanish newspaper. Even his high school auto shop teacher had emailed to say he'd seen him on the morning news. But it was the text from Claire that made him smile. "Check your front porch." There, in a simple white box, sat a chocolate dragon identical to the ones Tommy had loved at the premiere. The note read, "For my favorite dragon spotters, coffee still on for Saturday. Can we have chocolate dragon for breakfast?" Tommy asked hopefully, appearing at his elbow. "Nice try, buddy, but Cheerios first, then maybe a dragon snack later." As they ate breakfast, the morning shows played clips from the premiere. Tommy was fascinated by seeing himself on TV, but what caught Marcus's attention was the way Claire looked at them when the cameras weren't the focus. Soft, genuine, almost protective. "Your mom from school called," Mrs. Rodriguez announced, arriving for her usual morning duties. "She wants to know if Tommy can do show and tell about meeting Iron Man." Marcus hesitated. They'd been careful about Tommy's school exposure, but this felt different. "What do you think, bud? Want to tell your friends about the dragons and superheroes?" Tommy considered this seriously. "Can I tell them about Claire too? Jenny says she's my new mom, but I told her that's not how dragons work." Marcus's heart squeezed. "What did you mean by that?" "Dragons don't replace their family," Tommy explained, as if it were obvious. "They just make their family bigger. Like how Mrs. Rodriguez is family even though she's not my grandma. And Claire makes you smile like in the pictures with Mommy." From the kitchen doorway, Mrs. Rodriguez wiped her eyes, muttering something in Spanish about wise children. Marcus's phone buzzed again. Rachel, Claire's assistant. The morning shows wanted interviews. Magazines were offering covers. Talk shows were calling. But underneath was another text from Claire. "Tommy's dragon explanation just made Good Morning America. Apparently I've been doing relationships wrong all these years. Should have consulted a dragon expert sooner." He looked at the newspaper. Photo again. The critics were right. There was something genuine captured there, something that couldn't be manufactured by Hollywood publicists or staged by photographers. It was the same real connection that had sparked on a rainy night. In his old Honda. "Daddy?" Tommy's voice pulled him back. "Do you think Mommy can see us on TV in heaven?" Marcus pulled his son close. "I think Mommy sees everything you do, and I think she's very proud of how brave you were last night." "Not just me," Tommy said wisely. "You were brave too. Claire said so." Another text from Claire. "Fair warning, Ellen wants us all on the show. Promised to have dragons. Well, bearded dragons, but Tommy might approve." Marcus smiled, typing back, "Depends. Will there be chocolate ones too?" "Obviously, I'm learning the dragon rules. Speaking of which, about that coffee date. Think Tommy would approve of the dragon-friendly cafe near the park? They have those paper placemats he can draw on." Looking at his son, happily arranging his chocolate dragon for a photo to send to his class group chat, Marcus felt the last piece of anxiety about their unusual situation fade away. This wasn't about headlines or fairy tales. It was about three people who'd found each other in the rain, and a little boy wise enough to know that families, like dragons, came in all shapes and sizes. "The dragon expert approves," he wrote back. "So does his dad." The cafe in Lincoln Park was exactly as Claire had described, small, unassuming, and blissfully paparazzi-free. Their corner table offered a view of the fall leaves dancing outside, and Tommy was already deep into his artistic process, creating an elaborate dragon scene on his placemat. "The coffee really is great," Claire said, warming her hands around her mug. She'd arrived in simple jeans and a sweater, hair pulled back naturally, looking more like the woman from that rainy night than the premiere's glamorous star. "The pastries, however—" Marcus took a bite of his croissant and grimaced. "You weren't kidding. I know a place that makes better ones, if you're ever willing to brave the South Side at 5 a.m. Is that an invitation?" Her eyes sparkled over her coffee cup. "Look," Tommy interrupted, holding up his drawing. "This is us at the movie place, but with more dragons, and this one looks like Iron Man." Claire leaned in to study the artwork seriously. "The attention to detail is remarkable, especially the dragons. Armor very Tony Stark." The receipt for their coffee sat between them, ordinary and extraordinary at once. No studio assistants, no cameras, no premieres, just 3 people sharing a Saturday morning. "The Ellen Show called again," Claire mentioned casually, "but I told them we're doing this our way. No rush, no pressure, no manufactured moments." "Speaking of pressure," Marcus watched Tommy adding more dragons to his masterpiece. "How are you handling everything? The reviews, the Oscar buzz?" "Honestly?" She traced the rim of her cup thoughtfully. "For the first time in years, the work feels secondary. Important, but not everything. That night in your car, you talked about balance, about making choices based on what matters most. I remember. You said something similar about expectations versus reality. And now here we are, somewhere in between." She smiled. "A Hollywood actress, a mechanic, and a dragon expert walk into a cafe. Sounds like the start of a bad joke," Marcus laughed. "Or a good story." Claire watched Tommy, who was now explaining his dragon's technical specifications to a fascinated, elderly couple at the next table. "He makes it easy, doesn't he? Seeing the magic in ordinary moments." Marcus nodded. "Sarah was like that too. She could turn a rainy day into an adventure, a broken-down car into a chance to count passing trains." He paused, realizing this was the first time he'd mentioned Sarah so naturally to Claire. But Claire just reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "She sounds wonderful. I wish I could have known her. She would have liked you, not the movie star you, though she'd have been impressed by that too, but this you, the one who sends chocolate dragons and takes dragon spotting." "Seriously?" "Daddy!" Tommy bounced in his seat. "Can we show Claire the special puddle place, the one where we see the best dragons?" The special puddle place was their name for a small pond in the park, where Tommy swore the reflections held magical creatures. Marcus glanced at Claire, uncertain if a muddy park adventure fit into her schedule. "I'd love that," she said immediately, "but only if you promise to teach me proper dragon spotting technique. I'm still a beginner." They paid for their coffee, Claire insisting on leaving a generous tip for the starstruck teenage barista who'd managed not to ask for a selfie, and walked the short distance to the park. Tommy led the way, providing a detailed lecture on optimal puddle viewing conditions. At the pond's edge, Tommy demonstrated his method, squinting one eye, tilting his head just so, and waiting for the wind to ripple the water's surface. Claire followed his instructions perfectly, gasping at all the right moments. "I see one!" she exclaimed. "Right there, with silver wings." Tommy beamed. "You're getting better. Soon you'll be an expert like me and Daddy." Marcus watched them. These 2 people who'd walked into his life because of a random act of kindness on a rainy night. Claire caught his eye, and something passed between them. Understanding, possibility, the simple joy of a moment unburdened by expectations. "Your son," she said softly when Tommy ran ahead to check another puddle. "He makes me remember what it was like before scripts and cameras, when stories were just stories and magic was something you could find in ordinary places." "Is that a good thing?" Marcus asked. "For someone who lives in the extraordinary?" Claire slipped her hand into his, warm despite the autumn chill. "The extraordinary is overrated. Give me real magic any day, the kind you find in puddles and rain and unexpected kindness. From ahead, Tommy called out another dragon sighting. They walked toward him together, leaving behind headlines and expectations, moving towards something that felt a lot like belonging. The studio contract landed on Claire's hotel desk with the weight of an ultimatum. 6 months in London, her agent explained via video call. The role of a lifetime. They want an answer by Friday. Claire stared at the thick stack of papers, her mind drifting to yesterday's lunch. Tommy, proudly showing her his school art project, Marcus's hand warm on her shoulder as they all laughed at the boy's dragon stories. How could she explain London to a child who'd already lost one important woman in his life? Her phone buzzed. Marcus sending a photo of Tommy asleep surrounded by his drawings, including a new one of what he called their dragon family. Sight made her heart twist. Claire, her agent's voice cut through her thoughts. Did you hear what I said about the Oscar campaign? The studio's worried about distractions. Distractions, Claire repeated flatly. You mean Marcus and Tommy? The fairy tale romance was great publicity for the premiere. But this is awards season. They need you focused, available for events, media appearances. A working-class boyfriend and his kid don't fit the narrative they're building. The words stung, mostly because they exposed the gulf between her worlds, the Hollywood machine that had been her life for 15 years, and the simple joy she'd found in dragon spotting and bad coffee with a mechanic and his son. Her phone lit up again. Marcus asking if she was still good for Tommy's school play next week. He was playing a dragon, of course. I need time to think, she told her agent, ending the call before he could argue. Across town, Marcus was facing his own complications. Ridgeshare had offered him a promotion, district manager, double the salary, but it meant longer hours, more responsibility, the kind of security he'd dreamed of providing for Tommy before a rainy night changed everything. You'd have to give up the mechanic work, his supervisor explained, and the evening drives, we need you focused on management. Marcus thought of his garage coveralls, the honest work of fixing things with his hands, thought of the nights driving through Chicago's streets, the kind of work that had led him to Claire. Tommy's private school acceptance letter sat on his kitchen table. The education fund Claire had set up making it possible, but the school was across town, meaning Mrs. Rodriguez couldn't handle pickup anymore. Without his flexible schedule, "Can I have a few days to think about it?" he asked his supervisor. That evening, when Claire came over for their now regular family dinner, the complications hung in the air unspoken. Tommy sensed it, growing quieter than usual as he pushed his food around his plate. "Is it true you're going away?" he finally asked Claire. "Jenny's mom read it on the internet." Claire's fork clattered against her plate. "Tommy, because Jenny said when people go away, sometimes they don't come back, like Mommy." Marcus reached for his son's hand. "Buddy, that's not—" "I'm not going anywhere," Claire interrupted firmly. "Not without talking to my favorite dragon expert first." But after Tommy was in bed, the reality of their situation settled over them like a heavy fog. "London?" Marcus asked quietly. 6 months. Claire leaned against the kitchen counter, looking suddenly tired. "The kind of role I've always dreamed of. But dreams change," he finished. "Trust me, I know. This promotion they're offering." They shared a look of understanding. Two people trying to balance the lives they'd built with the life they were building together. "I could fly back every few weeks," Claire suggested, "and there's school breaks. And I could hire a nanny, change Tommy's routine again. But that's not what either of us wants, is it?" Marcus thought of Sarah, of promises made about putting Tommy first. Thought of Claire's face in the park, free from makeup and pretense, laughing at their puddle dragons. "You know what Tommy said the other day?" He smiled despite the heaviness in his chest. He said real dragons don't have to choose between their caves and their families. They find a way to have both. Claire moved closer, fitting herself against his side. "Smart kid. But sometimes adult decisions are more complicated than dragon logic." "Are they?" Because lately I'm thinking Tommy has it figured out better than we do. Outside, a light rain began to fall, the kind that had brought them together in the first place. Claire watched the droplets trace patterns on the kitchen window. I always thought choosing meant giving something up, she said softly. Career or love, Hollywood or reality, but maybe what? Maybe it's not about choosing between two worlds. Maybe it's about building a new one. Marcus turned to face her. What are you saying? I'm saying, Claire took a deep breath. Maybe it's time for both of us to be as brave as Tommy thinks we are. The rain fell harder, but this time, instead of separating them, it felt like it was washing away the artificial boundaries between their worlds, leaving only what mattered. A mechanic, an actress, and a little boy who saw dragons in the ordinary magic of everyday love. The photo hit social media on a quiet Tuesday morning. Claire and Tommy at his school's morning drop-off, the boy's face clearly visible as he hugged her goodbye. The caption read, Claire Bennett, playing mom to Chicago, mechanic's son, exclusive. Inside story, Marcus's phone exploded with notifications just as he finished an oil change at the garage. The school's number flashed first. Mr. Thompson, we have reporters at the gates, the principal explained, tension evident in her voice. They're asking the other children about Tommy. His heart stopped. Is he okay? He's safe in my office. But perhaps it's best if you come get him. The drive to the school was a blur of panic and anger. How had they gotten that photo? The school's privacy policies were supposed to prevent this exact situation, but then he saw them. The row of photographers camped outside. The gates, some with telephoto lenses aimed at the building's windows. Tommy sat in the principal's office, clutching his dragon drawing like a shield. Daddy, why are they saying mean things about Claire, about you? Because the photo wasn't the worst part. The inside story had quoted anonymous sources claiming Claire was using them for publicity, that Marcus was after her money, that Tommy was being exploited for a PR stunt. Someone, Marcus suspected his ex-girlfriend from high school, had sold old private photos to the tabloids. Claire arrived just as they were leaving through the school's back entrance, her face drawn with worry. I came as soon as Rachel showed me. Marcus, I'm so sorry. Tommy ran to her, and she gathered him close, meeting Marcus's eyes over their son's head. The word hung unspoken between them. Their son. When had that happened? My security team is handling the photographers, she said, and the studio's lawyers are already... The studio. Marcus's voice came out sharper than intended. The same studio that's been pushing you to focus on your image, to be more available for the Oscar campaign. Understanding dawned on Claire's face, followed by hurt. You think I had something to do with this? No, He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I don't know what to think. This morning my son was just a kid who believed in dragons. Now he's tabloid fodder. Daddy! Tommy's small voice cut through their tension. Can we go home? I don't like it here anymore. The drive home was quiet. Tommy sandwiched between them in the back of Claire's security car. At Marcus's house, Mrs. Rodriguez was waiting with hot chocolate and concern. The internet, she said, shaking her head. It ruins everything beautiful. Once Tommy was settled with his cocoa and dragons, Claire pulled Marcus into the kitchen. We need to talk about this. About what? About how my son can't go to school without being photographed? About how strangers are debating our relationship? Like it's a movie plot. About how we handle this together, Claire corrected gently. Because that's what families do. The word stopped him short. Is that what we are? A family? Or are we just a good story for your Oscar campaign? The moment he said it, he knew he'd gone too far. Claire flinched as if he'd struck her. How dare you? She whispered. After everything, you think this was ever about publicity for me? Claire, I didn't mean... You know what the studio actually told me? That being with you could cost me the Oscar. That a domestic storyline doesn't fit their campaign narrative. They wanted me to distance myself, to play up the mentor angle with some up-and-coming actor instead. Marcus felt the ground shifting under his feet. Why didn't you tell me? Because it didn't matter. Because I thought we were building something real here. Because your son, her voice broke, Tommy means more to me than any award. From the living room came the sound of Tommy explaining to Mrs. Rodriguez how dragons handle bullies, apparently with kindness and extra hot chocolate. He's going to need therapy, Marcus said quietly. Already researched the best child psychologists in Chicago. One specializes in helping kids in the public eye. Despite everything, Marcus felt a smile tug at his lips. Of course you did. I love him, Marcus. I love you both. And I will walk away from all of it. The movie, the award season, London, if that's what it takes to protect this family. The word didn't shock him this time. Instead, it felt right as stopping for a stranger in the rain, as right as Tommy's unwavering belief in dragons and happy endings. No, he said finally. No more walking away. No more choosing between worlds. Claire stepped closer. Then what? Then we do what Tommy would do. We find a way to make both worlds work, together. Outside, the photographers were probably still waiting. The internet was still buzzing with theories and judgments. But in here, in this kitchen where they'd shared family dinners and dragon stories, none of that seemed to matter. Together, Claire repeated, taking his hand. I like the sound of that. Claire's resignation letter sat unopened on her agent's desk while she paced the hotel suite, phone pressed to her ear. No, listen, I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you how this is going to work. Across town, Marcus was having a similar conversation with Ridge Shares Management. His own resignation letter was already drafted, but a different solution had presented itself, one that felt right in ways he couldn't quite explain. You want to keep working as a mechanic? His supervisor asked, bewildered. Even with the management offer? Part-time, Marcus clarified. 3 days a week. The rest of my time will be split between district management and family. Family. The word didn't feel strange anymore. That evening, they gathered in Marcus's living room. Claire, Marcus, Tommy, and Mrs. Rodriguez, for what Tommy had dubbed their Dragon Council meeting. The boy sat cross-legged on the floor, seriously considering the changes they'd proposed. So, he said finally, we're moving to a new house, but not too far from my school. That's right, Claire confirmed. A house with a bigger garage for Daddy's work, a yard for your dragons, and better security to keep the photographers away. And you'll be there too? Even when you're making movies? Claire pulled out her modified contract, the one she'd spent weeks negotiating. I'll only take projects that film in Chicago or during your school breaks, and when I do have to travel, you and Daddy can come visit. The studio wasn't happy, but dragons protect their family, Tommy finished sagely. That's more important than movies. Marcus squeezed Claire's hand, remembering their long talks about balance, about choosing not between worlds, but how to merge them. There's something else, mi amor, Mrs. Rodriguez said, producing a folder of her own. I'm selling my house, moving closer to help with the schedule. Maria, no, Marcus protested. You don't have to. Familia, she interrupted firmly. This is what Familia does. Tommy looked around at the adults, his face serious. But what about the special puddle place and Mommy's pictures? The pictures are coming with us, Marcus assured him, and we'll find new special places. Maybe even better ones. Plus, Claire added, the new house has something special. Want to see? She pulled out her tablet, showing Tommy the real estate photos. The boy's eyes widened at the sight of the small pond in the backyard, complete with a wooden dragon sculpture serving as a fountain. Our own dragon pond, he exclaimed. Can we move tomorrow? The adults laughed, tension breaking. Mrs. Rodriguez disappeared into the kitchen, returning with her famous hot chocolate, the recipe she'd promised to teach Claire, another piece of their worlds merging. Later, after Tommy was in bed, Claire and Marcus sat on the porch swing, watching the stars emerge. The studio's still not happy, she admitted. They say I'm throwing away momentum, that this kind of compromise could hurt my career. Are you sure about this? Marcus asked. The schedule changes, the location restrictions. Claire turned to face him. Do you remember what you said to me that first night about how sometimes the best things in life are the unplanned ones? I was trying to sound wise and philosophical to impress the pretty stranger in my car. Well, it worked, she smiled. But you were right. All my carefully planned career moves, all the strategic choices, none of them made me as happy as one random act of kindness in the rain. From inside came the sound of Mrs. Rodriguez humming as she puttered around the kitchen, already at home in their unconventional family dynamic. You know, Marcus said thoughtfully, Tommy asked me something interesting today. He wanted to know if dragons could have two mums, one in heaven and one on earth. Claire's breath caught. What did you tell him? I told him that love doesn't divide, it multiplies. That Sarah will always be his mom, watching over him. And that sometimes, if you're very lucky, life sends you more people to love. Smart. Oh, Dad, Claire murmured, leaning into his side. Smart kid, Marcus corrected. He figured out what we adults took way too long to understand. Oh? What's that? That sometimes the bravest choice isn't choosing between two things you love. It's finding a way to make room for both. The new house key felt solid in Claire's palm as she unlocked the front door for the first time. Moving day had dawned clear and crisp, perfect October weather for new beginnings. Tommy rushed past her, eager to claim his room, the one with the perfect view of the Dragon Pond. Welcome home, Marcus said softly, carrying a box labeled Sarah's Photos. They'd chosen a special place for these in the living room, where sunlight would catch the frames each morning. Mrs. Rodriguez was already directing the movers with military precision, ensuring Tommy's dragon collection made it safely to his new room, while simultaneously instructing Claire on the proper arrangement of her kitchen. The spices go here, mihija. Trust me, this is how a real kitchen works. The garage was Marcus's domain, spacious enough for his part-time mechanic work, with a small office for his district management duties. He'd found a balance that felt right, keeping his hands in the honest work he loved while taking on new challenges. Miss Bennett? One of the movers approached Claire hesitantly. My daughter loves your movies. Would it be possible? Of course. Claire smiled, signing the autograph with genuine warmth. This was part of her world too, one she'd learned to integrate rather than separate. Tommy appeared with his latest drawing, their new house complete with protective dragons circling the roof. Look, I made one for each of us. That's Daddy's dragon fixing cars, and Claire's dragon is making movies, and my dragon is teaching them all about puddle magic. What about my dragon? Mrs. Rodriguez called from the kitchen. Yours is the biggest. It's guarding the hot chocolate recipe. The laughter that followed felt like christening the house, making it truly theirs. Later, as they unpacked boxes in the master bedroom, Claire found the worn receipt from their first real coffee date. She'd kept it, tucked away like a talisman. Remember how terrible those pastries were? Marcus asked, looking over her shoulder. Worth it, though. She pinned the receipt to their new bulletin board. That was the day Tommy taught me proper dragon spotting technique. Speaking of Tommy, Marcus hesitated. The adoption papers came through this morning. If you still want to, Claire's heart swelled. They discussed it extensively, with Tommy, with child psychologists, with Sarah's parents who'd given their blessing. Of course I still want to, as long as Tommy does. Are you talking about making Claire my official dragon mom? Tommy's voice came from the doorway. He had an uncanny ability to appear whenever he was being discussed. Marcus knelt to his level. Remember what we talked about? About how this doesn't change anything about Mommy. Tommy nodded solemnly. Mommy is always my mommy, but dragons can have big families. That's what makes them strong. Claire joined them on the floor, this little circle that had begun with a simple act of kindness. That's right. And you know what else makes dragons strong? Love. Tommy threw his arms around them both. And hot chocolate. Did someone say hot chocolate? Mrs. Rodriguez appeared with a tray of steaming mugs. A house needs proper christening. They sat on moving boxes, sipping hot chocolate and watching the sun set through their new windows. Outside, the dragon fountain cast playful shadows on the pond's surface. "The studio called," Claire mentioned casually. "They're adapting my schedule for the London project. 2 weeks there, 2 weeks here. They weren't happy, but dragons don't compromise on family," Tommy declared with chocolate-moustached authority. Marcus smiled. "The wise dragon master has spoken." "Oh, that reminds me," Tommy dashed off, returning with a slightly crumpled envelope. "I made invitation cards for my class. For the Dragon Pond party next week." Claire examined the carefully drawn invitation. "A Dragon Pond party? To show everyone our new magic place. And because," Tommy looked suddenly shy, "because after you sign the papers we'll be official, a real dragon family." Mrs. Rodriguez wiped her eyes, muttering about onions she wasn't even cutting. "Speaking of official," Marcus reached into a box, pulling out a small photo album. "Tommy and I have been working on something." The album was filled with their story, newspaper clippings from the premiere, Tommy's drawings, photos from their coffee dates and park visits. And on the last page, a new family portrait, taken just last week, all of them by the Dragon Pond, laughing at something Tommy had said. "Room for lots more pages," Marcus said softly. Claire touched the photo gently. "A new chapter." "With dragons," Tommy added. "With dragons," Claire agreed, pulling him close. "Always with dragons." Outside, the setting sun caught the fountain just right, making it seem as if the dragon was winking at their little family. A family built not on fairy tales or Hollywood endings, but on something far more magical, the simple truth that love, like dragons, knows no bounds. 1 year later, the Academy Awards red carpet gleamed under the Los Angeles lights, but it wasn't the golden statues that had Tommy bouncing with excitement. "Look, Daddy! Iron Man came to our family photo!" Robert Downey Jr. had indeed joined. Their red carpet moment, kneeling beside Tommy to admire his dragon-themed bow tie. The photographers went wild, capturing the moment Claire Bennett's Oscar nomination became a footnote to her son's superhero encounter. "Still seeing dragons in those puddles, kid?" Robert asked with a wink. "We have our own dragon pond now," Tommy informed him seriously. "You should come visit. Claire makes really good hot chocolate, almost as good as Mrs. Rodriguez's." Claire, radiant in midnight blue, squeezed Marcus's hand. "Almost," she agreed. "Some dragon magic can't be replicated." The headlines the next day would note that Claire Bennett didn't win the Oscar for Echoes of Autumn, but they would also capture something more precious: a family's genuine laughter, a child's unfettered joy, a love story that had transformed from viral sensation to lasting truth. Back home in Chicago, the Dragon Pond reflected the spring sunrise as Marcus tinkered with an engine in his garage. Tommy's artwork covered one wall, his talent growing with his imagination. Claire's schedule hung nearby, carefully balanced between film projects and family time. Mrs. Rodriguez still came by daily, though now it was as much for family as for childcare. Her house down the street had become Tommy's favorite after-school stop, where dragon stories were exchanged for fresh-baked cookies and unconditional love. "You know what, Daddy?" Tommy asked one evening as they sat by the pond waiting for Claire to return from a short filming trip. "I figured out why the dragon brought Claire to us that rainy night." "Oh?" Marcus smiled. "Why's that?" "Because she needed us as much as we needed her. Dragons are smart that way." When Claire's car pulled up, Tommy ran to meet her, dragon drawings clutched in his hands. She scooped him up, designer dress and all, peppering his face with kisses. "Miss me, Dragon Master?" "Always," Tommy declared. "But it's okay, because you always come back." Marcus joined them, completing their circle. "How was London?" "Good," Claire smiled. "But this is better." They stood together in their garden, where magical creatures still swam in puddles and love still worked miracles. Not the flashy kind from movies, but the quiet magic of family dinner conversations, bedtime stories, and hearts that chose each other every day. Above them, the dragon fountain caught the last light of day, its shadow stretching across the pond like a guardian's embrace. And if you looked closely, really closely, the way Tommy had taught them all to look, you might just see what he saw, not a wealthy actress, a hard-working mechanic and their precocious son, but a family of dragons learning to fly together. Because sometimes the most magical stories aren't about grand gestures or fairy tale endings. Sometimes they're about a simple act of kindness. On a rainy night, a child's wisdom and the courage to believe that love, like dragons, knows exactly where it belongs.